What's good, people? Welcome to this episode of the By the Hood podcast or webcast. I don't know how you're consuming this content, so I won't say which one it is. But as usual, I'm your host, Jimmy. We have a great episode lined up for you. I have my brother Corey in the building. Corey, what's going on, good brother?
What's going on, Jim?
Oh, man, I can't complain. Nobody's listening. You know what I'm saying? I'm fair and partly cloudy.
Partly cloudy.
Yeah. But listen, man, we have a great episode on the way. Before we get started, as always, I got to say this episode is brought to you by Own Your Time and Space. This is the book written by myself and my brother Corey. If you don't have it, make sure you cop Own Your Time and Space. Link will be in the bio. But this is a special episode for a couple reasons. For one, this brother that we has in kind of feels he hits a couple check boxes on what we wanted to do when we created this program. So, you know, we talk a lot about finance, business, economics, and things of that nature, but we also want to highlight people who are doing important work in the community. And this brother is actually a business owner, but his work is also very important. So I'm looking forward to hearing about his journey and having a great conversation with this brother. This is the brother Winston Bailey, who is the CEO and founder of BCDS, which is the Behavioral, Cultural, and Development Solutions. That's what BCDS stands for. A behavioral health therapist is what he is, and he treats adults with autism. And he, So without further ado, man, I just want to welcome you, Winston. How are you, good brother?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys from having me. Thanks for the invite. I think what you guys are doing is great. I mean, it starts now on a ground level, and I've watched a few videos, of course. I do follow you guys, and you guys have a strong following, and that's what's it about.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. You know, one of the things about this is, and we're trying to, as we build this catalog of content, talk to people for different spaces, because the one thing I can say, representation matters, right? So coming up as a kid, I was one of those people who was told, you know, doctor, lawyer, firefighter, you know, the things you're normally told. I didn't know that, you know, there were black scientists, and, you know, till you get more exposure, you get to school, you learn certain things or what have you. But hearing a little bit about your story, I told Corey, we got to have him on because you're working in a space that I don't see a lot of brothers and sisters working in. In fact, I'm not sure about this, but been doing research for the show. Do you have the only program for adults with autism, like in our local market?
No, I don't. There's a few other providers, is what they call them, in my space.
Okay.
But, yeah, there's a few other providers that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. So, because I saw that somewhere, and I'm like, I don't know about. I didn't dig too deep, but I was going to figure out. I ask you, but so your program or your company, nonetheless, you help adults with autism. But before we get into BCDS, give us a little bit about your background. Where were you born and raised, and a little bit about your schooling.
Okay, sure. So, I'm from West Philly. My parents are from the West Philadelphia Winfield section. And I went to local West Philadelphia High School out in Overbrook Park, which is sort of another section of West Philly closer to the city line. I went to Lamberton, and, you know, after that, you know, I did the track after I graduated, went up to a state university called Bloomsburg, and really was seeking for more brotherhood and camaraderie and really yearning for Black intelligence. And so I transferred to Morehouse College. I got accepted to Morehouse. And my experience at the HBCU was short because at that point I realized I wasn't the token, so I wasn't getting any money. The competition for financial resources is fierce and limited. And me being a transfer student, the students that had already sort of set their sort of, academic sort of anchor for some of those funds, you know, at that point I was like 20, you know, I just came back home. I said, you know, I really can't afford that. And, you know, Philadelphia is my home base. Came back to Philly, and it was interesting because I also got accepted to the University of Maryland, their main university. And I didn't go there, but I said, I'll come back. I applied to Temple, St. Joe's, and Villanova. And St. Joe's had rolling admissions, and they accepted me. I think Villanova accepted me too, but I just went with St. Joe's. And really just tracked, man, just really grinded it through. You know, my story is no different from any other brother and sister out there that wanted it bad enough. You know what I'm saying? And the only thing I had in my mind is that I wanted to finish my undergraduate career, and I wanted to do that at any means necessary. So I had to change my major. I was a pre-med major. I had to change that. And, I was also a minor in Spanish. I had to change that and just really just focus on, psychology. I wound up getting an undergrad in psychology with a focus on industrial organizational psych. And then, got a job working at a residential treatment facility. Really still interested. You couldn't really do anything with a bachelor's degree in psych, but make a job doing $12 an hour. That's what I was doing. And, it was like, I got to go to graduate school. And the job that I was working, one of their new hire sort of orientation employees was that they were paid for my graduate school. So I was like, all right, then I'm going to come work with you guys. And then I got accepted to the graduate school that's affiliated with that employer. And they were like, oh, but wait, you got to work here for a few years. I'm like, oh, man, y'all got me. So I got accepted to the graduate school. There was a bunch of them I could apply to, but this one in particular, I thought it was, a good opportunity. Nevertheless, I wound up graduating from Holy Family University with a master's degree in counseling psychology with a focus on student affairs and higher education. And I got a master's degree in human resources management. And that was an experience too, because again, just grinding it and the interesting thing about that experience was the student affairs and higher education was a new program that the university had offered. And I was like in my second year in that graduate program. And I'm a big believer in create your own path. And you sort of have the book that reflects that. If it's not there, you make it, you create it. So I was like, I also had an interest in still industrial organizational psychology. So I said, what would my graduate experience be like if I applied to the HR program? So by my second year, unbeknown to my advisors, I applied to the HR program at Holy Family, went through the whole admissions process, applications, essays, and all of that. And they accepted me. And then I told my graduate program, like, listen, I'm also a first-year student and they were like, what? You're about to do your internships and all of this stuff. And was really discouraged. They were really looking at, like, how are you going to do this? And at that time, the type of student that I was, I had so much experience that, half of the subject matter in the class was like, this is theory. I think I know what is going to work. And, I was able to get through some of the theory courses.
Got you.
And as sort of the progression of the graduate school program got more difficult and stats and things like that, of course I struggled a bit because I needed to sort of have a focus and they kind of saw that. But I stuck with it and I graduated with about a B+, what you call like a, I wasn't an A student. I was working full time, but, of course you can't have anything less than a C or a C. You can't do C's in graduate.
Yeah, not in graduate school. So it's interesting your educational journey because, now running your own business, you actually have a master's degree in human resources. And that's no one I know that has, I know several people that have like HR degrees, but no one actually is working either in HR or runs their own business.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, so my question to you is, how did that experience with that degree, does it help you at all on a day-to-day basis? Anything that you may or may not have learned? And,
So I had a bit of experience in corporate America. I worked for Merrill Lynch for a short period of time. I've also worked for Harris Casino for a short period of time, exploring my HR endeavors. Mm-hmm. And I'm a training and development guy. I'm an IO guy, right? Industrial organizational guy. And I believe that we spend a great deal of our energy in the workplace. And I believe that there's so much that can add to the sort of the overall dynamics of someone's life that, that you can't miss that. So, my focus was training and development. And so I applied that training and development passion of mine. Of course, some of the theory is gone, but I apply that to at least my work environment. And so culture is very important. Culture is extremely important. And if you don't really take the time out to really understand the type of culture that you're trying to cultivate or architect, then that's going to determine sort of the stability of your business. And I've been running this business for 7 years without a partner I just really I had a really some strong administrative team the last 3 years. But a lot of that, I think I have to attest to my passion to make sure that, people are getting something out of this work experience. So to answer your question, I think it's one of those, I think you have an affinity if you're in that space in HR to want to have people get more out of the workplace than just be human capital.
Got you.
We understand that, we're the battery that keeps the lights going in our organization, but you want to have something where people get something out of it. And that was one of my experiences when I was working at Merrill Lynch. Those big corporate companies, they had like cleaners on the campus, they had a gym, they had a spa. I was like, damn, you know what I mean? Like, they take care of their employees.
Yeah.
I knew, being an employer, that I wasn't going to have that starting out. I wasn't going to have, but so I was like, well, what is it that I can offer? So, and sort of a long-winded way to answer your question is I apply it through the sort of the human aspect of it, the human piece of it.
Okay. So now you gave us a little bit about told us about your background rather, and, the various jobs you had. What led to the formation of BCDS? Like, so you specialize in adults with autism.
Right.
How did that come about? What made that a passion of yours?
Sure. So after I graduated graduate school, I was disenchanted with the idea of America, being a black man, right? I didn't want to wear a monkey suit. I didn't, my job at Merrill Lynch was while I was in graduate school. And I was just disenchanted. I mean, I really didn't do anything with my degrees to the capacity that I'm doing it now for like the first 3 years. I just unplugged, to be completely honest with you. I unplugged for a few years. And then I was resigned to the fact that because I enjoy policy and sort of the cultural aspect, that I can do consultation work for organizations that I liked. And so that's what I was doing. I was the nerd in the back of the office looking at policies and reading and enjoyed it. And as long as I was out of the limelight, I was cool. And I had a falling out with the owner of the company, which really he was trying to save face, but was basically blatantly stealing my work and like, yeah, like it was crazy. So I was just, and I used to always have this recurring thing where it's just like, I used to challenge the authorities at some organizations because, I would be like, well, if you want to improve on the quality of the outcomes, you have to do this. And there's also the political play. At that point, I didn't understand. I understand it more now. And, they were always like, well, if you should be a director or you should do this. And, I had those type of positions and things like that. But what happened was I had a falling out and I had thought about, I want to start my own company. And I started out basically as a sole proprietor. I was living in West Philadelphia at the time, right on Bering Street. And 2012 was the genesis of Behavior and Cultural Development Solutions. And I just basically sold my services as a consultant. And I am still friends today with my first contract, my first employer contract. This was a sister that has her own business, and she was having morale and staffing issues. And, I put together a contract. I gave her some of the outcomes. She hired me, and it went from there. And then, of course, the business, it grew. At that point, I understood that my business needed to grow.
Okay.
And I did this I was broke, y'all. Like, I mean, I don't really say that. I can say it now, but I was broke as shit. I was broke. Like, when I wanted to start my business, like, I was on an unemployment check. And I was on an unemployment check, and I had just got married. I inherited 2 sons and a wife, right?
Mm.
And I moved out of my apartment, and my wife was living with her mom at the time, and I was living with my mom in the basement. And I didn't have a car. I was on my last, you have to always, back in the day when Obama was for president, you get them extensions. I was on my last extension, my dude. Like, I was on my last extension for real. And, I got the contract, but that, contracts, they're short. A month here, 2 months there.
Yeah. And
I would have to borrow my mom's car to go to, my consulting gigs. And that was a problem. You know what I'm saying? I'm 33, 34 years old, and I was always a headache, and here I am taking another risk and didn't have a computer. And, I was traveling, my first client I got in behavior supports was all the way out in Pottstown.
Wow.
2 hours a week.
So, but that's all part of your journey. And like, they say that that's the best part, because now you could look back at that and see what you've built. Cause it's 7 years. It's 7 years. Yeah. It's 7 years later.
I was like,
It's 7 years later, and you're still here. So I mean, listen, man, that's honorable right there. That's honorable. But how did you get to specializing in adults with autism? Was it something that just came your way, or was this always a passion, or how'd that part come about?
You know what? I kind of fell into it. I don't have that story. Like, I don't have a specific individual. Ironically, my cousin has a son on the spectrum. I didn't know that until recently. So it's interesting how that does affect us and we don't know it. And he's going to be helping me out in the future with my nonprofit. But I just had an interest in behavioral health. Like, that was my thing. You know what I mean? Like, I liked that you could shape behavior and you can see the outcome of that in a very positive way. And my thing was black boys turning to be men. So I was really adamant about making my stamp in the world by giving back. So, but the autism piece, it was like one of those things. Okay, I'll do that. That's new. Again, it was new, it was fresh, and I was like, I'll give it a try. And it was actually one of the hardest out of all the other sort of waiver-based programs in the state of Pennsylvania. It is probably the most challenging waiver-based program to be a part of, because you don't get a huge amount of services. Like, you got all these home health care agencies popping up, but they scrutinize your credentials. Corey knows, he goes through it. I'll be like, it's not me, it's the state. They asking for your shit again. Yes, They are. They want copies. They want to make sure and they want to look at the paperwork. They want to do this and do that. But it made me tough. It really strengthened me emotionally and mentally, because again, when you take that leap of faith, and we'll talk about my experience as an entrepreneur, I didn't have a plan B.
Yeah,
I really didn't. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't going back. All I knew was that I have a responsibility now, and I have 2 young men that I have to be an example for now. You understand? So, yeah. I didn't have a plan B. You
mentioned something interesting though. You said how it affects black boys, right? So anyone that I know who works in this space or this field always talks about how, the system, so to speak, affects black boys differently than anyone else. So someone who works in social services or psychology, could you just expound upon that a little bit? How it affects little black boys? Because you're not the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah.
And so give me your experience and what you mean by that. And go as deep as you want. But when you said that, it just clicked, because you're not the first person I've heard say that.
Oh man,
just give a little bit about the outcomes. Don't go all the way in. Just give a little bit about the outcomes.
Okay, give me more, Corey. Give me more.
The outcomes, the differentiated outcomes for little black boys compared to other races and stuff like that, instead of taking it all the way from A to Z. Okay. Just give a little bit about the differentiated outcomes.
Okay. So it's going to be somewhat anecdotal, because I don't have like any of the data in front of me, but just based on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
The resources and tools that are provided to them are not equitable to their white peers.
Okay.
And okay, what does that mean? The workforce that our children should be preparing for is a workforce that's well versed in all aspects of technology. And when you go to Philadelphia public schools, middle schools, and pre-K and things like that, our school systems are dilapidated. Are the resources that the children are using are old, antiquated, and they're using technology, but really not understanding things like this. I had a class And I asked the class, is this software or hardware? They said it's software. I said, this is hardware. The stuff that's in it is software. And you can make a career. This right here, this is a phone case. You can make millions learning how to make phone cases. Do you know Gorilla Glass? Do you know it's a company that makes millions of dollars creating sand to make, these are 3 different industries right here. And they don't teach our kids this. But when you go to Haverford and Malvern and Bryn Mawr and things like that, I get the whole socioeconomic difference and things like that. They're given these tools. So when our kids graduate, when Corey's sons graduate, they're looking to be their service providers, their servants. You know what I'm saying? And so they're not looking to be industry leaders and all of that. And so it's, to me, it's blatant, and it's I'm gonna stop right there.
No doubt, no doubt. I was just asking because of the way you said it. Like I talk to people who work in the space, not necessarily directly with you do, and they've said the same thing about like little black boys. So
yeah, and I'm gonna give you this one more anecdotal experience I had. So Mondays and Wednesdays, I go to Overbrook High School and I do a program for work readiness program. And my contract was to focus on the social emotional aspect. So what I did was I wanted to sort of infuse the social emotional aspect with media, social media platforms and technology. And one of the lessons I focused on today was the platforms of social media like, YouTube and things like that. And then the music that they listen to. And I was breaking it down to them, even down to the emotional, biological influence that the music you listen to, that you're constantly listening to, the hooks. And I explained to them how hooks become personalized affirmations. And we watched some few rap videos. We watched like 4. And the theme was the same. These are young boys from Philly, Chicago, and they all had guns, and they all showing the guns. And I said, well, what's the hook of the video? And they said, like something like, murder, and your brains be dead. I'm like, no, that's the hook. Now you keep saying that, and you keep saying that, you keep internalizing that. Eventually, you're gonna turn. That's gonna be a negative affirmation. Like you waiting for a nigga to test you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then now I'm trying to give them just a surface level, but there is a construct. There is record companies that is willing to produce this. You don't see the same thing. I went to Kenya. I went to Africa. I went to the Philippines. I went to Panama. I went to other countries, and I plan to go to more. But you don't see the same forcing of that particular message to their youth. And in our youth, they're willing to do that. These kids are getting, signs. And, YouTube there should be a disclaimer. We don't want that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I understand the expression of your emotions, but I'm trying to tell them, like, these kids that are talking about gun violence and they talking about popping pills and things like that, to me, that's trauma. They dealing with trauma in the worst way. Yeah. Now you got 15 brothers that are paranoid because of the murder of their friend. Now they popping Xans and things like that. So this thing gets, for me, that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting because like I've had like long debates with myself, on one shoulder, another shoulder about because I know the power of music and the power, like you said, of hooks and sounds, even the instruments, the way they're played in a certain way.
That energy.
It's just very demonic, man.
Yeah, but then it makes me think about this too, though, right? So I know that it's also in terms of the record labels, it's a money thing. Like, so if for some reason, positive messages sold, they put their money behind that. So then it goes into the trauma that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Why do these certain sounds and words resonate with us more than others? Because there is positive messages in some music out there, but nobody's checking for that.
Right. And they're not even, I mean, not to get too psychological or analytical, but they're not even talking about that this is a form of therapy. Meek Mill's new album, The Championship, like that was cathartic for him. I mean, he listened to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he talking about some real shit. He's putting it out there on the airwaves so other kids can identify, but he had to get it out. And that's a problem too when not to get too much into it, but now we're talking about Black mental health. Black men, it needs to understand that they do also have the array of emotions that any human being has. And what happens is if you don't have an outlet, for some of them, it's not rap. You think about what happens to a pressure cooker. You're going to pop.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, as a very crude comparison, we kill our communities, our friends, our best friends, our cousins. White kids pop, like the one that did it at the Garlic Festival, said he was angry. So you killed people because you angry. You understand? Angry for what?
And it's an interesting conversation because I didn't realize until a couple of years ago, actually, and you know, I'm an adult, but that, you know, just growing up in the inner city, certain things that are just normal to me aren't normal, right?
Right.
I was having
trauma.
Listen. I was having a conversation with someone from California, and we were just having a conversation about certain things, and just certain things that are normalized specifically in Philadelphia, and you know, to me that was just like, you know, wow. I guess I'm personally suffering from PTSD, and I've normalized certain things in my life that I shouldn't. You know, when you talk to someone and they tell you that they don't have any family or friends that have been, you know, died of gun violence, I'm like, I thought everybody did. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. You be like,
I'm like, you don't know
Where you
anybody?
from that nobody died from gun violence?
Yeah,
like,
to me, that's like, to me, I'm looking at them like they're weird, but it's like
at least one person strung out.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm the weird one. Like, you don't have any junkies in your family. Like, how's that? Like, no, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's a deeper, darker conversation. But you're right though. But you know, just to get back to our conversation, you are right that a lot of our boys are dealing with this. So I guess the question is, and some of these questions are so deep, and I don't want to have us on here all night. But
yeah, I got you.
In short form, what's the answer?
Man, it starts from the womb, man. I mean, it's going so. My theory is that it really starts with healthy mothers and healthy relationships. And so, you know, I'm into epigenetics now, and they were talking about how they did a study of the rise in cortisol levels of mothers that experienced 9/11. And I think that our young mothers, our young fathers, I mean, they're going through so much trauma, so much repressed trauma, that they're passing it off to their children, let alone the traumatic experience from slavery. And there's information out there that talks about cross-generational post-traumatic stress and things like that. There's not a whole lot of studies on it, you know, for whatever reasons. But I think that it really starts, we're dynamic. So it really starts with from the minute that child is in the womb. And it's about how the mother addresses, you know, certain personal stress. You think about it, you have a mom that is now 15 or 16 or 18 or young, and now she's pregnant. She's living in practically a war zone, and she's struggling. We don't know the chemical impact that's going on and the stress levels that's going on in her body. That information is being internalized, fed to her child. Now that child is out in her womb crying and yelling and seeking for things. Mom doesn't understand the value of attachment, and now is causing a whole lot of anxiety in that own kid that's produced. I mean, it starts there, and then you're talking about the lack of sort of substantive food with, you know, significant nutritional, you know, value that these kids aren't getting. They're eating all these type of different products that are substituting or mimicking what they should have, and they're not. And it starts with that, right? Because we know that vitamin C is important, and, you know, it helps with, you know, stress levels. So I think it starts there. And I'm only basing that off of right now. I'm also doing a program at a shelter in North Philadelphia, which is also part of our nonprofit. And, you know, listening to mothers that their norm is living in a shelter. Now they have children that are living in a shelter, and these kids are living in a shelter, but it's almost like an apartment, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to become their norm. And then they have sort of this transverse sort of lifestyle, this transient lifestyle. They're here, they're there, never really stable, and stability is important. So I think that if we start looking at the conversation from the beginning, because what happens is, and this is in my field, I could talk specifically with this, Corey knows it. We get a new consumer. They want me to address the problem like right there. Well, hold on. Now, in the context of behavioral health and applied behavior analyst techniques, you know, they only want to focus on the behavior, but we're dynamic. So I have to really know sort of what is the occurrences that have happened prior to me coming here, and, you know, what's the relationship with the mom, what's their skill set and things like that. And so what happens when we're talking about things on this magnitude with violence and outcomes for kids is that they want us to address the immediate problem. Let's focus on this right here. Let's forget all the stuff in the back, and you're really not addressing the issue.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, and the only reason that just requires work, man. That requires work. And
they want you to solve a problem. They want you to solve they want you to solve the symptoms and not the problem.
Right.
And that's why we address problems before we get to the symptoms.
Yeah,
right.
and that's crazy because that reminds me of like you see a lot of times in education and not just Philadelphia, across the country, where they just throw more money at it.
That's it.
They don't even dig deeper into see what the actual problems are. It's just like, let's allocate more money to this school. But
Right.
it doesn't matter how much money you allocate if you're not dealing with the actual problems.
But the thing is, that's why what Winston does is dope, because he can, as running his own company, he can address the problems before we even get to the.
That's the hope, Corey. That's the hope.
Yeah, I'm just saying we can address the problems, you know what I mean, before we get to trying to solve the symptoms that came from that problem.
Right.
Yeah. Man, this is a great conversation. I want to ask you a couple of things because, you moved into entrepreneurship, and your story is amazing. You said you was on your last extension, your last Obama extension.
My last Obama extension, for real.
And
my last student default. I was like, listen, I can't give you nothing, okay?
And so you talked about that feeling of like, listen, I have nothing else to go back to. Any part of you feel like, man, I should just go back and get a job? Like, what am I doing? And if you didn't feel that way, how did you push through it to say, no, I got to do my own thing?
It never entered my mind.
Never even entered your mind?
Never entered my mind. To get a job? No.
Nice. Okay.
Never entered my mind. I would never. Nah. It was just like, at that point,
you say hook or crook. This is what you're doing. Like,
fuck it.
I heard that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, this is it. I'm not going back. And I think that's what sort of, and if you're looking at objective, that's kind of insane, right? Because, I got a family. Think about it, right? Because I'm like, we got to move. I got to take care of these kids. And I'm not making anything. I'm traveling 3 hours just for 2 hours, just for the client to be like, I don't want services today. That type of shit. And I was still young in the marriage, so I didn't have my wife to like, she wasn't a shoulder for me to go to. And that's part of the Black mental health. I didn't have anybody be like, yo, man, I'm out here in fucking Pottstown, man. This motherfucker told me that he didn't want services. Yo,
But at the same time, you're showing them that you're willing to fight for your dreams. A lot of people aren't willing. A lot of people have goals and dreams, but they're not willing to fight for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Outside of that, you have an interest in technology, and I know that you've started another company outside of your number one company. So tell me a little bit about Precision Treatment Analytics.
Absolutely. So give me 1 second. Okay. So Precision Treatment Analytics came out of, I had a need, right? I had a need to make sure that, because I was getting audited so much. I mean, I was getting audited. They was auditing me and I was like, y'all just came out like November of last year, and the year just turned, and you out here again for another audit. And I was just like, what do y'all, they was like, nah, it's just this and that. It's just not a whole lot of providers. And I was like, I need a better way to keep track of my services and, my clients and the hours and all of that. So I started looking for an electronic health record that would keep track of that. So my staff, I really wanted to go paperless, right? So my staff can have access to the goals. They can get the client to sign, boom. Then I can get billed, because at this point I was doing the billing, I was doing the payroll, I was doing some services, and I was managing people and still trying to get new work. I was just all parts of the business. And I was running ragged, and playing husband and mentor and father. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need something to sort of soothe some of this burden. And I found the company, and I went through that, and I paid them like 10 racks to get started. And they were like, oh, it's great. And they courted me. They courted me for like 2 years. And I'm a real decisive buyer. I can be impulsive, but I'm like, nah, I'm not ready. And around the second year, I was like, okay, I can afford it. I'm ready. And then they were like, well, this is going to be great for you. And I got it. And then when I started to launch it to my staff, they didn't have access to it because it wasn't compatible with a particular browser. This is how it began, right? So now I'm 10 grand in. It's a license application. Now they're asking me for like $1,300 a month. And I'm like, y'all told me that this was compatible with this browser and that browser and that browser. And then they started to backpedal and they were like, well, hold on, that was our sales team. And I'm like, well, that's not y'all's the product y'all sold me. Make a long story short, I had to get my attorney involved. I keep her on retainer. I terminated the contract. They still tried to get money out of me. 2 years later, I told them to go back to the termination of the contract. And then I said, you know what, I can do this shit on my own. So I went out and I said, you know what, I want to create a behavioral health application that allows for my consumers to stay connected with their staff, no matter sort of what providing agency they're in, because often in this space you have multiple providers working with one consumer. And the one thing they don't do is they don't share information. And so there becomes a sort of a lot of duplication in efforts. Like if I get a new consumer, if there's already a plan out there, I at least like to know where I'm coming from. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to repeat the same thing. And then the family's like, oh, the last one did this and that. And you're just like, well, where is the information that support that? So it was really something that the staff can have and the provider can have and sort of do their job more efficiently. And then the idea was that, so if the individual had 4 providers working with them, then all 4 providers, even don't matter what company they're working for, they can see the progress of that child or adult throughout the day. So if Corey's working with him in the afternoon, you know, he puts information in, boop, 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 and then it shows the data. There's been a number of new additions to programs like Epic and Therapy and things like that in that space. The electronic health record space is growing big. But that journey was important for me because I want to say close to $50,000, or if not more, dollars into creating a program from scratch. And that was my learning curve. I got burnt by a program development company from India. Not necessarily burnt, but their business model really wasn't aligned with what I was looking to do. And that's just because I was naive. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I was willing to take the risk. And in taking that risk, I lost my money, but I also gained a great education. And then I found out that, you know, there's other ways and other methods to get the application that you want without spending so much money. And, you know, I started reaching out to a lot of people. I had a marketer, I had a program, a project manager, a product manager. I had all these different people, and I just started getting like real savvy. I'm like, I need deliverables, started applying that to my business. I need to know what you're going to do at the end of this day. And needless to say, I kept pushing it so I get an MVP. I had to make a number of iterations, and it got to the point where I had connected with a brother that writes code, and, you know, for equity into the project, he's willing to work for me. But what I wound up doing was, all the while sort of running the main business, I started going to meetup organizations. And I started realizing that I was the only black face at these meetup organizations around a bunch of, you know, techies. And, you know, they use jargon like the ecosystem and the tech space. And I started understanding what that means. And, you know, I started getting strong. Like, you know, there's a difference between Python and Java and JavaScript, full stack, front stack, back stack, all of that stuff I wasn't aware of. And people were asking me, so if you have a business and you run a behavioral health business, why are you here? And I'm like, because, you know, I want to learn, and this is what I want to do for my company. And I realized I started on a journey a few years ago. I was like, you know, I want to write a book. And I want to write a book from the space of an entrepreneur, a minority or black entrepreneur going into the tech space for the first time. And what are some of the challenges and the perceptions that are either unspoken, but is shown in actions and behaviors, or things that are actually said to you as far as your naiveness into that space. And really giving them, I wanted to create like a blueprint, some steps, you know. So, you know, one of the chapters, like, don't develop it from scratch. Somebody has done it already. Find a platform to build on it, something like that. You know, understand what an MVP is. You know, people say terms like MVP, and really not knowing what an MVP looks like. I did the biggest mistake was, and this is one of the chapters in the book, and I tell this to a lot of people when they have a new business idea, I always say, well, does your customers want it? And when I tell people that, and they're very enthusiastic about their idea, what they don't understand is that I had already lost about 30,000 already creating something and not finding out whether or not my people wanted it. So if I'm telling you, did you find out if they want it? I'm telling you for a good reason. Did they ask for that? Did they say like, hey, Corey, yeah, we looking for this? And if you didn't find it, if you didn't survey them, if you didn't do focus groups, I did focus groups. Man, I was doing cold calls. If you don't find it, then you're going to be dead in the water, because that's when you start making a lot of changes to make a product fit their needs, as opposed to doing it other round, to identify what that need is, scale down who your customer base is, and deliver something that's very basic so they can understand what it is that you're trying to.
That's powerful game right there, because like you said, before you do make that kind of investment and spend that kind of time. I know Corey likes to hear that. Spend that kind of time. Do people actually even want what it is you're doing, right? And that sounds very simple, but I understand what you mean by that, because a lot of people, they just go full gung ho when they get an idea, not knowing whether anybody even cares or even wants to, whatever it is. Right.
And I did it. And the first thing people were like, you have a pretty good idea. You have a good concept. Why don't you use it for your company? Or, why don't you use it for this population? And I just had this grandiose idea, and I joined all these organizations, and I got mentors. Like I'm all or nothing. I'm either in it or I'm not. And, I started hearing some of the themes over and over again. And it was just like, did they ask for it? Did they want it? So what's your customer base? And I did a lot of research on who my customer was, and then found out that, okay, this is my customer, but then now they can't afford it.
Wow.
Then I was like, well, how am I going to get paid if this is my customer group and they can't afford it, or they don't have the money because it's for a specific population that gets subsidies from the government? And then what's my strategy? Do I go to the government subsidy and convince them to pay me to address a need that they didn't really ask for yet? So I started taking all of this and taking into account, and said, well, I know I'm not the only person that's going to go on this journey, but what I did realize is that there's a, and I'm going to speak about mental health and entrepreneurship. There's a mental health component to it. I remember laying by my bed, and I had a little carve out, a copy of my app, the mobile version of my app, and I put it by the wall. I know it sounds corny. Everybody does it. I did it. And, I put down some of the features, and every time I woke up, I looked at it, and that was something. But the one thing that my wife didn't do, she never discredited me. She believed in it. You know what I'm saying? And that's another rule that I got out of as far as being an entrepreneur is have a conversation with your family, because the money I spent in that app, that could have been a vacation. You know what I mean? That could have been some clothes for her. They're like, because it failed, right? And I learned from my failure, but you need somebody to really to understand that you're the type of person that, okay, you're going to learn from, but you're going to keep pushing. And I think a lot of people don't take account. You can't be an entrepreneur without having your squad with you. You really, you got your hype squad in the rap. You can't do it. You can't, because then you got doubters. And then I'm not in the business of convincing. I'm past that. I used to be, but then I'm like, that's take too much energy. I'm not going to convince you. So if you don't get it, no problem. I'm just going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just keep going. And so it's important that I even told my accountant this. I have a new account now, but she's growing. I was like, you want to go on your business, tell your husband, like, things are about to get tough. That lifestyle y'all used to, that's 6 figures about to get low. Because what you don't understand is, and I hope you understand, I'm trying to merge these experiences, is that when you take that risk, it doesn't only affect you, it affects everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody is in it now. Your kids, I tell them, like, listen, I know y'all used to eating out, but y'all not noodles. We got ramen noodles in the cabinet now. That is on the meal plan. You dig me?
It's a sacrifice. But you playing a long game, and that's what it's about. It's about playing that long game. A lot of people, like I said, a lot of people aren't willing to get uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like people have these goals, and I'm like you said that sound corny. It don't sound corny to me. I write all my goals down. I write all my, all those things down, and I put them up. In fact, I have them as my screensaver on my phone. Every time I look at my phone, I'm looking at my goals. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I totally get that. But man, you shared a lot of wisdom right there in those last 5 minutes, man. You know,
Appreciate
but
you.
yeah, but listen, another thing, you have another organization, which is a nonprofit organization. So before we get out of here, tell people about your nonprofit and what's your objective with your nonprofit.
Sure. So Colors on the Spectrum is my new baby. Colors on the Spectrum focuses on partnership, advocacy, and education. And so what happened was I learned my lesson. I started getting phone calls from other organizations with parents wanting to know if I can provide services to their children. Because at that time, we became a Magellan provider. And they were like, we're looking for a provider that can be consistent, or we're looking for somebody that's Black and this like that, or we want somebody that's familiar with our community. And I started saying, there's a lot of moms, there's a lot of Black moms. Like I had a Hispanic sister call me and, they want somebody bilingual. And they're like looking at like, could you provide the service? And at that time, I didn't feel like I could meet the capacity. I had staff, but I would have to transition them to start providing services to children that are recently diagnosed. I was getting phone calls from the Center of Autism. The Center of Autism doesn't provide ABA services. That's not what they're there for. They actually are there to, I believe, diagnose, and their services are pretty much limited.
Okay.
So we were getting calls from children, parents that children recently diagnosed. And I said, you know what, I can create a nonprofit through the support of a friend that really believed in me, a brother, which is important. He was like, Winston, this is a space for you. You need to fill it. And I'm like, for real? He's like, yeah, how many, Black males that are in this space, that living in this community, from this community, is really addressing that. Others are saying they're doing it, but if you look behind the curtain, they're really not. And he was like, the one thing I know about you, you're going to do the work. Unfortunately, you're going to be tired, but you're going to do the work. I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah. So started a nonprofit. I started knocking on doors, and, I started really pitching. Once again, I understood the value of having at least a 30-second pitch of basically what my business is about, and really focused on addressing those issues as related to being misdiagnosed, diagnosed late, or not diagnosed at all. And so what that looks like is, and it's interesting because as I started fast forwarding this experience, started going to schools, teachers like, oh no, we're addressing this issue and things like that, but not knowing that some of the children that have a diagnosis of conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder or things like that, it may not be autism, like that's my space, but it could be post-traumatic stress disorder. It could be attachment disorder. It could be anxiety. It could be conduct disorder, and it could be anything. Or they might not be autistic. They might have an auditory thing, hearing impairment, speech impairment. But because, this is one of those, we got to catch them all. We got
they lump it all together.
And those things can be addressed. So it's just like, okay, they're being misdiagnosed. And so you'll see that. You'll hear parents say, well, that's why, if you focus and pay attention, if your child has been diagnosed on a spectrum, they got to get reevaluated after a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. Now you think, well, if they have a neurological deficiency, that's what they call pervasive developmental disorder. This is going to last throughout their lifetime. Mm-hmm. So why am I reevaluating them? And that's because sometimes those kids are presenting things that were actually not what they had assumed to be. And so they probably have grown out of it, or with appropriate support. You have the Early Start Denver model. Of course, you have your ABA. You have some other sort of techniques out there, child therapy, play therapy, that help sort of some of those neuronal synapses to start firing the right way. The development starts because their brains are still malleable, and boom, right? No speech delay. Boom. No cognitive delay. Boom. No impulsivity, right? So I was just like, I like to get in that space and to address it, because I wanted to change the paradigm, right? I started hearing another conversation where a lot of universities and colleges are coming into our community and are using our community almost like a petri dish or a lab experiment or research subjects. And they come in, they go into the community, and they have a very strategic way of sort of getting the support of community advocates to say, hey, we're here, we want to help, we want to do this, we want to do that. But after their semester's over, or they get their credits, or they get the outcomes of their research, they're gone. Then the people in the community are like, well, what do we get out of it?
Wow.
I'm like, I'm here, right? So let's flip this upside down, right? Let's do it upside down, right? So how about, this organization be the organization that platforms, that leads the research, and then that provides the information that we get out of the research to provide the services and understand where the outcome's going.
Because is that why you structured it as a nonprofit? Was it something strategic about? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Got you.
When you're talking about grant supports, when you're talking about pairing with other organizations, strategically it was the best option for me. So there you have Colors on the Spectrum. We've been, like I said, we've been a year old. I applied for the Philadelphia Autism Grant. I literally got an email from a friend of my grandfather's 4 days prior to his due date. And I sat in this office and I just was like, I'm doing this. And I sat in until I finished it. I did everything I could, sent it, revised it. And I think I was away. I was in Ghana, and I got the email saying that I was awarded the grant. And then I came back and I was like, well, shit, I got to get a team.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
I had to interview people, and that was a challenge too, because sometimes you'll find that people that say they're for you when it's time, they like, it doesn't really work with my schedule, this and that. And it's like, oh man. So I had to really scrounge for an art instructor. I had to scrounge for a special ed instructor. I had to really scrounge. And I didn't have, let me tell you, they didn't give me a lot of money. I'm a full disclosure. They gave me like $756. And so the people that I got on board cost way more than that. So I'm taking money out of my main organization to make sure that I believe in it's better to deduct than to add too much. So it's just like, I can shave, and do whatever. So I'm learning. This has been my first pilot program, my first camp. But and
okay.
I've been rocking and rolling. I've been at Marie Dendy in North Philadelphia, Mill Creek now, Martha Washington, which was an adapt and adjust strategy, and the Woodstock Center in North Philadelphia, all on a couple $100 and some donations from another organization.
Wow, Winston, listen, man, your story is amazing. The fact that you was like, look, I'm going for it, and you didn't even think about like turning away. Now you have the experience in building a business out where you actually have real employees. A lot of people like to call themselves business owners, but they don't have to make payroll. I tell people, when you got to pay somebody,
it's different.
Things are different, right? So you've built that out. Then you have experience in the tech space because of a need. They say necessity is the mother of invention. And now, you're bringing it all together with a nonprofit. So you have experience in all these things. So 2 more questions before we get out of here. The first one is this. With all those experiences that you have now, which led you to this day, if someone is getting in that space, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give someone starting out fresh? They want to help their community, but they want to build their own business and they want to get into this space. What would be the one piece of advice you would give them?
Focus on your mental health.
Their own personal mental health.
Yes.
Okay.
First thing I think this is I play to win. It's the long game. And I find that most people, some people have started out with me as trying to be a provider, but they didn't make it. Most people buckle. An argument of I told you so when you fail. Shit, man. When the bank account gets in the red and you got to pay people. I've had plenty of nauseating sleepless nights because the most important thing is paying people. And I think that if I did not have the mental fortitude to press on, I don't think I would have made it this far, because I have failed more times than people have actually seen. I really have. And I think that, you gotta check yourself. You gotta check how you deal with stress, the impact of it. I think those things are really not focused on, because let's say that, you do start out. I tell somebody, go get it. I tell them all these great strategies, and, they gained 50 pounds and they got bags under their eyes, and, they're a completely different person. You're not going to see the fruits of your labor. You're going to die of a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you're going to lose something. And I don't think that's a fair trade. And I'm in a space right now. I'm really, it takes a lot of energy, but I'm really focused on, the impact that it's having on, this man right here.
Okay, that's great advice. That's a new one. No one's ever said that one, but that makes perfect sense.
Bar.
That makes perfect sense. And the last question before we get you out of here, can you give us a book or two that you've read throughout the years that's either been inspiring or your favorite book?
What? I keep them on my phone. I'm sitting here playing with it. Unfortunately, I had it turned. Let me see. Done with cloud. Give me a second. Because I do Audible, and I do Audible because I can listen to it, going to my office, all that stuff. So what I want to do is, if you can bear with me.
Yeah, I'm an Audible guy too. So, but I'm always on Audible.
I have a few Audible books that are I think essential that you should have in your playlist.
Okay.
And, I could tell you just Og Mandino.
Okay, let me write these down.
Yeah. Og Mandino. Give me where is it? Come on, Audible.
Do you know the name of the book?
Yeah, so I believe it is oh man. Give me a second. Give me a second.
Having a little brain fart on a good book.
I'm gonna give you a few. I have a few books that I know. If you listen to them today and you have more experience, it's going to resonate differently. As with any book, what I do is I try to listen to books multiple times. I tell you, I did as my stuff comes up, I did a challenge to myself, right? About my 5th year. Everybody says businesses don't make it past 5 years. And like my 4th year and 8th month, I was really struggling financially. And I was like, man, is this it? Am I a statistic? I'm already a statistic. Am I done? Is what? I was really like on that verge. And, I got a good squad, but I'm like, I can't let them see me sweat. But, they might hear me rambling, but deep down inside, I'm like, yo, like shit is getting crazy. And the only thing I knew, like a madman, is fucking push. And I tell myself that push. And what I did was 1 year, and I told my staff this, I did a 365 days. I tried to commit 365 days. I picked specific self-affirming audiobooks and YouTubes, and I listened to it before I went to bed. I listened to it when I was in the shower. I listened to it in my car, because what I found myself doing was I found myself having defeating thoughts, and I was too deep. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm in too deep. So I was like, the only way I can compete with these defeating thoughts is if I have something in the background. Now, I know the brain, whether I do it consciously or unconsciously, will pick the shit up. So I would listen to this shit at nauseum. And sometimes like, damn, I heard this shit already. But I'm like, fuck it, I got to put something. And so I would play a lot of, self-affirming CDs. And sometimes these are like old white guys, like, whatever. But I think sometimes the message still resonates no matter who the person is coming from.
Yeah.
And so I would also listen to like stories of trial and error, like people that have tried stuff and have failed. Because the biggest thing that happens too is, and I was in this space by myself for a while, is that you live in a bubble. You think that nobody else is experiencing it. And I realized that I'm not the only person stressing about payroll and benefits and staff. There's other motherfuckers out there too.
Yeah.
I'm not talking to them, but I keep it real. Like when you talk to me about my business, I'm telling you what my numbers are. I'm not faking it. Yeah, man, the motherfuckers cost a lot. You know how much benefits is? Like they be like, I got this and got that. No, like sometimes it's like my family, like my people got to eat before I eat. You know what I mean? Like, so I had to have, let me find it. Give me 1 second, brother. I had to have it. So it was Og Mandino. Man, give me 1 second. There's a few books. Okay. The Power of Now is one book. Keys to Greatness. As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah, I've read that one.
The Greatest Salesman. Chapters 13 all the way down. I love them. The Psychology of Winning. The Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires.
I read that one.
There's another book, the brother that started Jet Magazine. I listened to his book, his story. I forget his name, but he had a good book. And then on the tech side, there's Built to Sell. There's a few good books called Brand Seduction. That's a good book.
I saw Brand Seduction because I read one called Brand Washed.
Okay.
So
that's good. That's
recommended too.
Brand Seduction. And another book. This is sort of an existential, epistemological type of book. It's called The Kabbalion. It's about sort of, you got the principles of Maya, or the 7 hermetic principles. And I started to really get into that. And basically, some of the chapters is that nothing is at rest. Everything vibrates. And I unknowingly understood this. As a therapist, we have to be careful of our body language, our tone, our pitch, our cadence, because it may trigger something that you're not aware of. But knowing that everything vibrates, even if I can't see it, people do have thinking, creates energy. You know what I'm saying? There's something that they call it, there's frequency waves to thinking.
Okay.
And so, knowing that you can project that, to other people. And I started paying attention to that. I was just like, if I want to win, I've made it so far, but if I really want to win in life, and I don't mean financially, if I want to win, then I have to have the people around me winning too. And they got to believe that I can win.
Absolutely.
And so I started really focusing, like I can't, you got to believe, because I believe I can win. Nigga, you got to believe you can win. So we going to win.
So that's interesting, because that means that you've also made it an investment in like self-improvement. Outside of all the other investments you've made in people and in technology and products, you've invested in yourself.
My background is similar because my degree is in the administration of HR. So I understand exactly what he's talking about when he's talking about going through these phases and making sure that people get better. You know what I mean? Like, and then when he starts talking about vibrational energy, that brings it back to the beginning story about the music.
Yeah.
So it takes it all the way back in a circle. So those affirmations that you were doing and that trauma stress release that you were doing, that's another thing. When you're dealing with these young people, that you gotta give them somewhere to release it, like you were saying earlier.
Right. I'm going to the gym later. I'm going to hit some weights.
Well, that's a place I don't, I haven't hit in a minute. The only thing that hit me in the gym is the door on the way out.
Come on, man. Get in there, man. Stop that. Come on, Corey. I tell you, man, I keep it real when I say, Corey, come on, man. Stop that. Yeah, man.
Listen though, man, you've given us a lot of information, a lot of gems, and a lot of wisdom, man. And we went a little deep here. And I know we could have went deeper, but at the end of the day, man, I don't want to keep you here all day because I know you're a busy man. But Winston, I just want to say thank you for the time that you did give us. I want to wish you much success on your business, your nonprofit. Any way we can help, let us know. The people that are listening or watching, how can they get more information about you and what you got going on? Maybe your nonprofit or
listen, man, just email me at wb@bcdsllc.com. That's wb@bcdsllc.com. You can call me. My number's out there, 267-343-2538. If you have some questions or you want to know something, I'll try my best to get back to you. I do run a very busy schedule, and I do try to get back to everybody that does get in contact with me. But yeah.
Okay. All right, man. Well, thank you, man. And for those out there listening, if you're watching this on video or listening on a podcast, make sure that you share this information because we're trying to spread this message that brothers and sisters all across this country are doing great work in the community, and we are building businesses. We all don't we all don't play sports. I like sports. I love sports too, but I shared something today that there's information out there that there's actually more black surgeons than NBA players, right?
Wow.
And it's funny, right? Because see your reaction, right?
But nobody believes it.
Nobody believes me, right? But I actually looked up. I did the research. There's data out there. There's actually more in specialty surgeons, brain surgeons.
Wow.
But the fact is, most people, even our own people, don't believe that because when you wouldn't know that by watching, mass media. So
right.
One of our objectives is share these messages that, we're out here doing work in all kinds of spaces, whether it's real estate, behavioral health. We have stock traders. We have all kinds of people doing all kinds of amazing work. And we want to make sure we share these stories. So the people out there, share this information. Own Your Time and Space is the book. That's our sponsor. Give us 5 stars and give us feedback. Let us know if there's anybody that we should be talking to that's doing amazing work in the community or building a business. But again, Winston, I just want to say thank you, man. Corey, any last words before we get out of here?
Yo, I appreciate you coming on and coming through, and your time and the efforts that you put into our community. I really enjoy and appreciate that, having worked with you as long as I had.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so salute to you, Winston, man. For everybody out there, man, we always say it's not about how much money you make, it's how much you keep. Game elevates, and peace, people. We love you. Peace.
Peace.